Good morning. Thank you for joining our session today. We're having our dating and relationship conversation this morning. Do me a favor, share with your friends, especially those who are single. Let's be part of this conversation today before we bring our guest on. So, in the last 3 weeks now, this is the fourth week. So, the last 3 weeks, I can't believe it's been 3 weeks. 3 wonderful weeks we've been having this conversation, just talking about dating and relationships, what to consider before dating, and even what to do when you start dating, and how to handle relationship. We've talked about difference between dating and being in a relationship versus courtship, how people use the words interchangeably, some of the challenges that people experience. So we've talked about those in the last 3 weeks. So today we continue the conversation. We've had amazing guests so far. And today I see our guest is on already, and I'm going to bring him on. Today we have Rob Kowalski. I am excited to have him today, and I will bring him on at this time so we can start this conversation again. I think it's important to this conversations, and I do know people would continue to see this as they wake up or stumble on it. Hi, Rob.
Hi, how are you?
Good to finally sit across from you virtually. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the invitation to come on.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for honoring the invitation. So my name is Funke Oladele, and so great to have you here. And welcome everyone. Good to see you. Thank you for joining this dating and relationship conversation with Funke Oladele and Rob Kowalski. So in the last 3 weeks, since the 10th of September, we started this conversation, just kind of talking about what's important to keep in mind prior to dating and while dating, or being in a relationship, and talking about courtship too, the importance of courtship. We talked about, we've had amazing guests in the last 3 weeks. We talked about purity. We talked about waiting. We talked about, just what to watch out for, focusing on yourself, singleness, the beauty in your singleness. So we continue that conversation today. And I know Rob has even his own personal stories, his experience with the community, with people, and a lot of nuggets to share with us. So welcome everyone. Again, let's invite more people to join. Invite your friends, especially those who are single. We want to be able to support people. So I would introduce our guest for today. Again, so my name is Funke Oladele for those who don't know me, and I'm passionate about dating and relationship. God has put in my heart to write a book on it, to be able to guide singles, walking through my own personal journey and looking at the sphere for dating and looking at how complicated it is. I'm telling you, a lot of people are struggling. This is tough stuff. You don't get to learn it in school. Nobody's teaching you. You're having to just wing it and figure it out as you go. But we are trying to share what we can share to support other people. And so today I'm I've written a book. That book's coming out in November, on dating and relationship, but we are starting that conversation here. So Rob, as we have here today, Rob is a professed reformed bad boy. So I want to hear about that. With a riveting personal testimony from living as the most sought after stripper in his home state of Maryland to running the nightlife in the city of Baltimore, where he grew up. And at age 27, Rob had a life-changing encounter with Jesus that transformed him forever. He gave up a life of casual sex and addictions and is now the founder of the thriving nonprofit City Fam. Rob is now driven by a passion for leading others to Jesus and building the kingdom of God. And I think this is an amazing testimony. I see people from your DMV area just shouting out at you here. So welcome, Rob. So great to see you. Rob has built a community, a great following on YouTube of over 40,000. He's also an author. He's an author of Why Waiting Works. And he's the host of Kowalski Analysis. There's the book. All right, good. Kowalski Analysis podcast. And he has a viral video titled 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage. So today I'm just so honored to have you, Rob. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing well. The pleasure's all mine. Really enjoy it. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So hopefully it'll be a good conversation.
Awesome. Let's do it. Your favorite is one of my favorites. So let's get started. Rob is America first. Awesome. So I want to encourage you, if you're on this live, share this with at least 5 people and make sure you have at least 3 people who are single there. Do them a favor, because we're not just doing this for fun. We're not trying to have a conversation for fun. This is serious stuff. So
especially if you got any children that are like, teenagers or preteens or even adult Christians, because a lot of times I don't feel like they understand what we're going to talk about, the practicality of saving sex for marriage and how it's going to impact your life if you do and if you don't. So if you have anybody out there that fits that description, go ahead and share the video with them.
Thank you so much. So Rob, I want you to kind of start off this conversation. I want us to start this conversation by talking about the dating scene. So I've heard lately the dating scene has changed. It's more challenging. I don't know if they can compare it to before, but that it's very challenging right now. It's tougher to find someone to date. There's so many platforms you have to go on. You don't know who's real, who's not. How can a person still, be able? I think first, what do you think has really changed? What do you think has really changed, and that people can still be aware of in this time, regardless of how much it's changed?
I guess I would say the biggest thing that's changed is the stigma around having sex outside of marriage is gone. Right? Before, women would not give it up as easily to men, because men have always wanted it quickly. We'll take the sex as fast as you give it in most cases. Now there are, Christian men obviously should be behaving different, but for the most part, a man will have sex with you as fast as you let him. And there used to be, I think women didn't want to look like a slut before, so they wouldn't give it up as quickly. And now that's gone. Nobody looks at anybody as a slut. There's no stigma behind it. So it's not uncommon to go out and have sex real quick. Definitely no more than 3 dates. So like. And I think you don't know the person at all within 3 dates. You could easily get an unhealthy connection, a soul tie, or whatever you want to call it, to a person that you really would never have even given the time of day to had you pumped the brakes a little longer. So you could, you drift into a relationship, or you just kind of just becomes like a carousel. And I think, which is probably, what's happening more now. And I think the men are like, out there we're addicted to it now. We're addicted to the fast sex. It's like we're a bunch of addicts, and we're out there and somebody says they want to wait. It's like, you'd have to get clean in order to even, like nobody's waiting anymore. So but I do think I still have to believe that if a woman comes out and she has a firm stance in this area where she says, hey, I'm not having sex until marriage, she's going to be single longer. I mean, period. And the man may be too. But the odds of finding the right person go up, in my opinion, drastically, because you go through the duds real fast. Like you'll have so many people tell you you're crazy, you're stupid, they won't wait, whatever. But the thing is what at the end of the day, it's really simple. It's two people looking to say their best yes. That's what we're trying to find. I want to say, when I get married, I want to say my best yes. That no, I couldn't have done any better than you. She wants to say the same thing with me. I couldn't have done it. How do you do that? Well, that's to me, the conversation of marriage. When you introduce that into the equation, now you're both asking yourself some really hard questions. Is she everything I want? Is he everything I want? Not just kind of saying, well, let's give it a try. Let's just, take it for a test drive, and then drifting into it, never asking yourself the hard questions, or not until after the fact, which is what I think happens a lot. So I think that, definitely having a firm stance in the area of waiting, sexual purity. And, being willing to go through the wilderness, because it may be a journey for you to get to that person. But, and it's not, I'll be honest, like it's not necessarily comfortable to go through that wilderness season, and it could be long. It has been in my life, but if I look at what it's produced, it's been amazing. And I think like the Israelites and God, when God took the Israelites into to the promised land through the wilderness, it produced something. They learned to trust God through the manna and the fire by day or the fire by night and the cloud by day. They didn't have any real relationship with God, not the way they did after. So I think the wilderness prepares you for the promised land. So you got to kind of know what you're signing up for, and it may happen quick. I hope it happens quick for everybody. I mean, but if it doesn't, you just being conscious of the fact that there is a process, and even in the wait, there's a purpose. It's producing something in your life or in and through you. So I think it's kind of all those things. But I don't know if that answered your question, but
right. So from what you just said, it looks like everything has been normalized. Stigma of waiting is there, but I also think that there's not even so much education and talk about waiting anymore. I keep saying on these live sessions that the voice of sex is louder than the voice of waiting. And if we're only promoting waiting and there is no solid information, education, and support for it, it becomes difficult, especially out here when people are going there. It's almost like a requirement. In fact, I think it's almost synonymous to love in these days. That's the best way that people tend to want to express love. So what's there to do? You hear people say, okay, we're exclusive, or we're dating now, or you're mine, I'm yours. All of that links together. What does it mean to wait? What is the significance of it? Besides that, there's purity, and what does that enable you to do and not do?
I think, I think what the waiting does, if we're talking about marriage specifically, is that what you mean?
Yeah, dating, dating, prior to marriage.
Well, I mean, the waiting's going to allow you to get to know the person, like to really get to know the person. Because when I don't know if you've ever heard it's basically, at the moment a person starts using drugs or alcohol, they stop maturing. I almost feel like at the moment that you start having sex with a person, you kind of stop getting to know them on a deep level, because then it becomes more about the sex. So I feel like if you're waiting, you're getting to know the person emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. And then if you like all that, then you get married. Then the sex is, it's going to be amazing because you've already liked all the other stuff. So I think it allows you to figure all that out. But also at the end of the day, what it's done for me, I know that a divorce was going to be painful. If I get married and I have to divorce, I pick the wrong one, and then I have to go through a divorce. I know I'm going to suffer. So what that does for me, because I'm committed to not having sex until my wedding night, is now I'm able to look at a girl and go, is she really what you want? Because the Bible says the heart's deceitful. Okay. It's desperately wicked. So if you and I were dating and maybe I wanted to sleep with you, I might be able to convince myself that I'm in love with you. Maybe, right? Because the heart might convince me that, because I really want to, I'd be like, Funke, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Let's have sex. But if you said to me, let's just run down to the courthouse real quick, get married, I'd be like, let me think about this a little bit longer. That's the point. That's why I think God introduced marriage, because he didn't want us to, he knows that we're all selfish, and we will take it off the rack. We'll crack the seal. We'll take a sip. We'll put it back for somebody else. That's what we'll do. We'll use the shit, excuse my language. We'll use each other. We'll use things. We'll use people for our own selfish purposes, and we'll convince ourselves that we're good people, and we did it I thought I was in love, whatever BS we would tell ourselves. But marriage, when you introduce marriage, it doesn't allow you to do that, because it's going to hurt if you're lying to yourself. So that for me, that's what it's done, where I I've been single way longer than I wanted to, but I've, there's been a lot of women that I certainly would have slept with had I not been committed to waiting. And that would have caused any number of things. It would have either caused me to break their heart. It would have definitely caused some broken friendships. Now, these girls are great friends of mine now, and they're part of City Fam. They add a lot of value to my life. They would not be doing this if I slept with them. They'd think I'm a jerk, and they would be gone. It could have got stuck with a couple of them that I now know that I'm not really interested in like that, but I very easily could have drifted into a relationship with them and have been my girlfriend for years, or maybe even married them. And that's what I see happen. I see it a lot when you really commit to this. Because when I first started waiting, I really didn't understand the concept. I thought that saving sex for marriage was silly, or I just thought waiting to have sex period was silly. I always had casual sex, and when a girl told me she wanted to wait, I was like, thought, why? Like, we're just going to make each other feel good. Why would we wait? And I only did it because I believed God would bless me with a wife, which I knew that I didn't want to sin. And I believed that if I waited, God would bless me with a wife, but I didn't understand it. And only after doing it did I really understand it. So once you get on the other side of it, and I have this perspective of having been on both sides, I see it everywhere. I see so many people in relationships for the very fact that they didn't wait. They had sex with somebody that they didn't even like. And next thing you know, they got into an entanglement, and then maybe they had a kid or whatever, and now they're stuck years, decades later, some of them 20 years with this person that they've been complaining about to me for 20 years, but they can't get out of it because of the soul tie. And then when they do break up, the soul tie jerks them back in, which is what happened to me in my first relationship. I shared in my book where I was with a girl. We had sex on the first date, continued sleeping together, got to around month 3, and month 3 or 4, and I knew I couldn't play the non-committal game because I was dating and sleeping with other girls at the time. I was a stripper, and it was about 3 months into it, and I got to the point where I either had to make her my girlfriend or let her go. And at that point, I was in love with the idea of her. You know what I mean? I really liked her as a person. She was a good girl, and she had put up with a lot of my crap, and I was like, I'm going to make her my girl. So out of obligation almost, I asked her to be my girlfriend. We spent 4 years together. I was smothered in the relationship. I was always wondering, wonder if I could be happier with someone else, looking over my shoulder, having these thoughts. And then finally, after 4 years, I worked up the courage because I feel like I'm compassionate on some level. I couldn't bring it to myself to tell her that I wasn't sure if I was in love with her for 4 years. Finally, I worked up the courage and I said, I'm not sure if I'm in love with you. And she just, slapped her hands on her face and started crying, and I was bawling. And then about a month later, we broke up and she started dating somebody else. And that soul tie jerked me. And all of a sudden, it made me so depressed. I had to get her back. I was like convinced that, it'd be different this time. And I basically called her and pursued her, and she came back to me. And it was great for about a week. And then it went right back to the original dynamics. And I was like, why did I do that? I was free. And then we spent another year together. Same thing after about a year. Worked up the courage to tell her I wasn't sure if I was in love. We break up. She starts dating somebody else. Again, jerking that soul tie. Now I'm even more depressed. And I was like, I knew I was caught in something that I didn't have control of, but I didn't have control of it. So I just was like, look, whatever, come back to me. We will get engaged. I'll quit stripping. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do. I just wanted the pain to stop. And she didn't come back. She ended up marrying that guy. Thank God, because that soul tie had me, and I couldn't do it. I knew in my head something was going on that I didn't have control of, but like I said, I didn't have control of it. And I see that happen for so many people. It's the biology behind sex. Like, sex connects us to each other. The Bible says the two cleave together. So like, when you cleave together, it's like that oxytocin. It's all biology, and there's probably some spiritual stuff too that maybe I don't have a complete understanding of. But you get stuck with people, and if you're not waiting, that might not be somebody you want to get stuck with. Right. So I can't stress enough why this is the right way. It's super difficult though. It's hard because you're going to be lonely, you're going to be depressed, maybe, but it will produce good things, in your life if you let the process, do its thing. So.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Rob. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing your personal story. And from what you just said, so there are a number of things we're going to talk about, but I think the key thing is to realize that sex is so powerful. As good as it is very powerful and addictive. From what you just discussed, you get in bed with somebody, you sleep together. It's just for a few minutes, right? Even if you go hours, yeah, few minutes, but the lasting mental, physical, whatever it takes out of you over time, like you just said, we just talked about that oxytocin, and over time it keeps building up. You want more. Every time you go, you want more. You want more of that person. You want to demand. You want that sex to become a fuel to the love you want from that person, or you want to exhibit to that person. So it becomes kind of mixed up. Like you said, you knew you weren't so much in love with the person, but you were so addicted to them because of the soul ties. And that's where we get stuck in relationships that we shouldn't be in. That's where we get attracted to the wrong person. I want to use that word attraction because I in my book, I laid out the fact that honestly, because for the longest time you would hear love at first sight. I honestly believe that it's not love at first sight. It is attraction at first sight. I can see a person that's attractive, handsome, and automatically fall in love with you. Feel like I fell in love with you, but I just like and admire the fact that that person looks good. It can happen for a guy, it can happen for a girl, but that feeling can quickly go away, even if you don't explore it. If you don't explore it, so that's where some people get stuck. You see somebody, you get attracted to them, you want to keep pursuing them, and then you want to keep going, and then when you mix it with love, it clouds everything else about that person that you can possibly see, because you've seen perfection from the beginning. Perspective, right? So it's about perspective. And then the more we keep going, we keep coming up with some realities in our mind to want to make that person our husband or our wives. I think it's very important that we are careful with the people we mentally attach ourselves to and sexually attach ourselves to, and try to convince ourselves they're the ones for us. That's where we get trapped. I wanted to mention that, from the story you've shared, because these are nuggets that we have to be aware of. This whole being in a relationship and dating game and everything, it's really the thing of a mind. You have to be conscious to it. It's not a game. It's not like going to get a degree in school. This is like your life decisions, and we have to be like alert mentally and physically. Sometimes we experience the worst to then become wise about those things, but we don't have to when we have people who have experienced certain things to share. So I want to appreciate you for sharing that. You talked about how you went back to the girl, you guys got back together, and after 1 week, the whole "I want you back, I miss you, I'm gonna die if I don't have you, I can't live without you" was gone after a week. Reality set in again, but now you're still stuck. Then it's gonna take you how much longer? So you were in that relationship 4 years. 4 years. It took you maybe a year to get the courage to say, "I'm not in love with you." God broke you off. You're like, "No, God, I'm going back." You went back. Now you have to untangle yourself. For some people, it takes 1 more year. Some people, they take themselves to marriage from there. Unfortunately. And down the line, whatever they were trying to avoid while they were dating would eventually happen. You talked about you never want a divorce, right? So you take your extra time, but people then head for that line of divorce down the line because they've just ignored every warning sign on the line, on the wall. So knowing, and I wanted to emphasize there the importance of not spiraling in cycles over and over and over and over again, especially when you have sex. The entanglement continues. It's just there, So I want us to talk about singleness, because you did say you transitioned from, yes, you were having sex, and then being single. It was kind of a little bit difficult. I want us to talk about the beauty of singleness. The beauty of singleness. We need to really talk about that, because I feel like after a certain age, we're chasing this marriage goal. were chasing like, oh yeah, we need to work towards marriage. I need to get in a relationship. This was my mindset before too, because especially from the culture I come from, I'm from Nigeria originally, we're Africans. And maybe I think it's the same too everywhere. Here, you know, after a while, you get through school. Our parents still expect that, okay, you work on yourself, then you get married and you start having children. But there's a process to every single thing, right? The in-betweens are not discussed. I honestly, I wish I had taken more single time for myself before I got married. Like, before I started even dating at all. Like, I wish I was more in that single phase and spend time in singleness. And I talked about this in my book. So let's talk about the power in singleness. What do you think? You know, I think people fail to realize that. What are the benefits of being single, and how can a person maximize that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say, you know, like, so I've been single and waiting for the majority of the last 22 years. And I don't think that is healthy or natural. I'm like, sometimes I get mad at God. I'm like, this is cruel and unusual punishment. Because, you know, like, even this morning, I'll be honest with you, I woke up this morning and I was thinking about what to do. And you know, really, I came into the office because it's not like I had all that many options. And I was actually, during my quiet time before this, I was thinking, well, what would I like to do? And I was like, I don't know, maybe taking my son out to breakfast and driven with my family up to see a relative in a different place, you know, part of the state, or you know, all these different things. Sat on the couch while my kids were running around. Like, I don't have any kids. I've never been married. And you know, so I think it's a really natural desire for people, and I totally understand the appetite, you know, that how it drives you into bad marriages, right? But you miss the red flags because you want it so bad. You want to be with somebody. You want that companionship, or you make compromises in your values, and you have sex because you're really hoping that it gets you the relationship because you want it that badly. So I get that. Trust me, I understand it all, and I'm in this with everybody. I'm not saying that I don't feel those same things. I do, but I think the value and the weight. Okay, like, one thing I talk about is that a lot of people believe that Adam and Eve were created at the same time, and they weren't. Adam was created first, and Adam didn't get a woman. What he got was a job, right? God said, okay, you're going to name the animals, and I want you to tend to the garden. And then later, after he was fulfilling his purpose, Eve came along. And I do believe that that's the proper order for things. I believe in something called sex transmutation, which is something I talk about in the book, is a principle I learned from Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. And he talks about when you're not having sex, you can harness your sexual energy and you can use it to accomplish things. And I believe that that's been 100% true in my own life, because if I look at everything I accomplished over the last 10 or 11 years, it was way more than I accomplished the 39 before that. So I've been able to do a lot with my sexual energy. And when I do get married, I have some really cool stuff happening that I'll be able to bring my wife into, and she'll be my helpmate. And not to say that, and I'll be her helpmate. I'm not saying that I'm above her or anything like that. So don't take that for anything. But, you know, John Etheridge says in his book, I believe it's Wild at Heart, he says, a woman wants to play an irreplaceable part of a great adventure. So a woman, she wants to play an irreplaceable part of a great adventure. A man's responsibility is to provide that adventure to her, right? Like, take her on an adventure. Most men do not they don't never harness their sexual energy. They don't want to wait, so they never really figure out what their purpose is. They marry the wrong person because they drift into relationships and then so now they don't have their purpose, and they really don't have their person to help them get there. Versus, you know, like I said, figuring out why you're here, starting to work on it, and then the person comes along to help you get there. The right person, which again, by not having sex, you're finding out if they're the right person because you're asking yourself the hard questions. So I think that really is the proper order of things. If you're gonna achieve the you know, what the reason that God has you on this earth, your purpose. I believe that sex is so closely tied to that, you know, like, and waiting. And it really goes back to, like, you know, there's verses in the Bible that talk about, in the New Testament, it says about sexual immorality. And it says, let no one be sexually immoral or godless like Esau, who traded his birthright for a bowl of stew. So that verse compares sexual immorality to the story of Jacob and Esau. And if you know the story of Jacob and Esau, Esau traded something that would have lasted his whole life, his birthright, for something really temporary, a bowl of stew. And it was obviously very stupid on his part. And that's what they compare sexual immorality to. So what does that mean? Well, if you dissect it, I think it means that you're going to trade your purpose and your person for a piece of tail. If you don't wait, and then you're going to be horny again at some point, just like Esau was hungry again later that day. And, and now, but it's gone. You only had it, you gave it away, and it's gone. Now, not to say, obviously, redemption's there for all of us, but if you don't figure this out and at some point start doing relationships the right way, then you are trading something permanent for something temporary. And then it won't be there when you want it again. So I feel like that's the beauty and the weight, is that it does drive you into figuring out what you're here for, versus, like, I think if I look at just a Western civilization, nobody waits. And then we have a lot of distractions to help us keep our mind off the fact that maybe we're not really doing what we were here to do, watching football, drinking beer. And I like football and beer too. But people use a lot of video games, right, as a distraction, because they're not walking in their purpose, and that hurts on some level, on a very deep level. But people have heard the saying that says men live lives of quiet desperation. I think when you're not walking in your purpose, there's a quiet desperation, and you feel that pain. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I'm hearing, fulfill your purpose. Find your purpose while you're single. Spend time with yourself. Identify what God wants you to do, what you're here to do. Marriage will not help you figure that out. You're gonna end up, being frustrated in marriage. So you think you have the love you desire, but you're not in love with yourself, because you're not at the maximum potential you need to be. Yes, you can grow in love. You can grow while in marriage or in a relationship. However, your focus then shifts, because then you're not able to focus on yourself completely.
Totally.
So I see a comment here. Adam fulfilled his purpose first before Eve came along. And may I even add there that, this is one analogy that I think God helped me to realize. Writing my book, Adam was a complete man God created. As a matter of fact, God had finished everything else. Then Adam was doing his stuff. He was busy. God realized, not Adam, but God, as the Bible says, God realized that Adam was single. It was alone, and it was not good for this man to be alone with everything that he has blessed him with. And then God found the reason. God decided, I am going to craft the perfect person for this, my guy, because he has done what he's supposed to do. I want to add there too, one important thing. I broke down my book in phases, and the first phase is the preparation phase. I talked about the importance of starting with God. That's the most important part of any phase, of anything that has to do before dating, prior to dating, being in a relationship, or even thinking about marriage, whatever. Adam had a great relationship with God. God created him. God was coming to the Garden of Eden with him every day. He had a personal relationship with God. What's your relationship with God? What's your relationship with yourself? What's your relationship with your purpose? Where are you going? Do you know your bearing in life before you start seeking someone else to walk that journey with? It was until he built that much power and relationship with God that God realized that it's time for me to find a human being like him to be a companion to him. And so God crafted him. And that's one thing that I want to encourage everyone that is single at this time. Are you helping God? Are you playing God? Are you playing God for yourself? Are you trying to figure it all out by yourself and trying to just date and find the right person for you? Or would you wait? And that's one thing that you talk about, you're waiting. This waiting thing, if people only think about it as sex, you would miss the point. The waiting is everything waiting: spiritual, physical, sexual, emotional, professional, like everything that you need to do. That waiting enables you to focus on the right things to build you, and enables God to go to work on your behalf while you're minding your business and just letting him bring the best of it to you. I just wanted to highlight that. And thank you for talking about that, talking about Adam, and for the guest that brought it up. So we want to talk about transformation. You have a story of transformation, Rob. And I think the great thing about life is having things that are substantial to build upon or to encourage. You have a story of transformation, how prior to this, being sexual and not seeing anything wrong with, having sex and doing what you need to do. And probably you had a lot of relationships at your disposal, right? But maybe you were a girl's guy too. I can imagine, girls will want you a lot. But once you made that decision for yourself, and I can still imagine that while you're waiting, girls still want you too, right? I mean, they're still going to want you. But how did that transformation that happened in your life change your views, your social network, and just your total life and outlook in life?
So how did the transformation, it cut out for a second there. How did the transformation change what?
Sorry. How did that transformation change your views and your social network, including who you're attracting and who you're attracted to?
Well, I mean, when you talk about transformation, I definitely have to go back to the moment that I met the Lord. Like up until I was 27 years old, I didn't know if God was real. I did have a little exposure to church and Christian schools. Even a couple of years, I got expelled from two Christian schools. My uncle was a pretty strong believer, a very strong believer. My mom was not. So, when I got home, there was nothing it wasn't being backed up. And I had never really heard God's voice or felt his presence. So when I became an adult, my God was pleasure. I just wanted to do whatever felt good. And whatever was, stripping and club promoting, it was easy. It was fun. I was good at it. I made a lot of money. I was popular, a lot of girls. And then when I met the Lord at 27 years old, I got baptized in the Holy Spirit. It was a road to Damascus experience. I didn't go to church. I wasn't looking for God. He came to me and came to Mexico.
Found you.
Yeah. And I prophesied. It was a crazy experience. And, at that point, everything changed because now I knew we don't just die, that changes everything. When you know that there's not more after this, and that everything that you do here has a ripple effect, or, and that God even had expectations of me, it was almost like sometimes I compare it to, imagine you drive on this road every day and you're flying down the road at 100 miles an hour because you're like, there's never any cops here, right? Nobody's watching. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, there've been cops there the whole time. They've been taking, and they have all the, and that's what it was like for me at first. I was like, God's real, and he sees everything, and he has expectations. I mean, it was a combination of things. First, it was probably in the beginning, it was like fear, right? Because I was like, I didn't know how to view God. Is he this judge that's going to hit me on the head with a hammer if I mess up? Or, but then also he believed in me. He had a job for me. He was in me to follow him. I didn't really see any value in myself in relation to what I could do for him. I was like, what? I'm like the least religious person I know. I don't understand this. But because I believe he saw something in me, and I was like, well, I'm going to trust that there's something there. And that's really when I started walking with him. And then I kind of, just turned it around and tried to make it as much about adding value to people's lives as I could. Because before I was very selfish, it was mostly about me. I will say that I think, of course, when I was promoting and even when I was having sex with girls, I didn't feel like it was being selfish because I always felt like I was providing people a lot of fun, girls, we were making each other feel good. It was pleasure. you know, and then I think that once you really start following God, you understand how those things are negative for yourself and for others. So like, for me, the transformation really it was all about Jesus, and it was about, you know, just wanting to be obedient to him. And really at the end of the day, if you follow his ways, it is all about sacrifice. It's all about, you know, serving others and giving up your life for your friends, and everything that he talks about. Even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many, the Bible says. So it's like pouring ourselves out for other people is what we're called to do. And like, you know, I always go back to the part in the Bible where it says, those forgiven much love much. You know, like, if you're forgiven for a lot, you really love a lot, because you're like, man, God was really merciful to me. And that's where I go with it, because I'm like, I know how much I was forgiven. So I just want to push myself as hard as I can to serve, you know. And then, you know, it's not always easy. Obviously it's tiring sometimes. And sometimes I get selfish too. And, but I think it was, at the end of the day, it was realizing that, you know, it still blows my mind that God's grace, that of all people, he called me. And so I don't want to let him down. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And from Rob's story, I just want to put out there that if you're here and you feel like you're not worthy of being loved by God, or, you know, nobody can love you, or you've been through a lot and there's no redemption, there's always redemption. There's one person besides every human being, even your parents, that will always have your back, whether you get it right or not. And that's the person you always have to start your journey with, so that even when the human being you decide to walk your journey with fails, he would always be there to pick you up. And I think that's beautiful. You had me emotional here. I was just trying to fight back the tears. You know, thank you for sharing that story, because I think it's important that we realize that he's always there for us, and knows exactly what you need, actually. Whatever you need, and that's giving you anxiety in your singleness, and you realize, oh, you're seeing pictures of people and you're feeling like you're never going to get it, or you feel like, oh, you don't belong to a certain group because of the life you've lived. You're worthy of being loved. You are worthy of being loved. Unfortunately, I think Christianity of today doesn't, sometimes, not Christianity of today, people have so segregated the Christian race to some extent, where some people, that's part of why people feel guilty for the lives they've lived and the things they've done, and feel like they're beyond redemption. It doesn't matter what it's been. You are redeemable. You are lovable. You can have the best of things in life ever, no, even beyond what you ever imagined. I want to say that. So we get back here. We just had a moment there. Thank you for sharing, because just encounters are very important, and important to our deliverance, important to, you know, getting everything that we need in life and being the person that we are created to be. So it looks like you were called to a purpose. You were called to things that you needed to do. And I also hear you say earlier that, you know, you're waiting. And it seems like you're also waiting and thinking, God, you know, when, or something like that. Or, you know, you desire something one day. And we want to talk about how a person can know who's good for them. Because in your singleness, if you are being sensitive, you would know exactly what you don't want. You would know what you do not want. And that's why you're focused on what you want, because you haven't seen it yet, right? How would a person know who is good for them, you know, at this time, even being single, and what to look out for?
Man, you know, I'm not huge on lists. Like, I do think you should have some non-negotiables. I like 3 non-negotiables as a rule, you know, because I think you know, for me, my 3 non-negotiables are: they love Jesus, they're waiting or willing to wait, and then they're politically conservative. I don't think I can marry a liberal. And so for me, that just automatically, you know, there's a lot of people come across your path, and it helps you narrow the field pretty quickly. Almost like, you know, when you get a car and then you start seeing that car everywhere, you know, like,
Oh yeah.
so at least if you know what you're looking for. So I like the 3 non-negotiables. Beyond that, I think it's a lot of it, I think, is, you know, you got to be able to read, obviously, your feelings. If you're really excited about somebody and you're like, wow, you know, you continue to have positive feelings, and you have a relationship with God where you have some level of discernment where, you know, you're able to feel his leading. But it's, you know, it can be tricky because, you know, like, there are things that you want, right? Like, I've talked to girls and I'm like, you know, maybe it's because sometimes your own personal desire can override what you're hearing from God, and you're maybe thinking that it's God when it's just you wanting something, right? And there are tons of red flags and you're not seeing them because you're like, I'm really, you know, I feel like this is a, you know, a God thing, and it could not be God at all. So it's tricky, you know, like, I think, you know, spending a lot of time with him, discernment trumps everything. You know, a woman reached out to me on Instagram the other day, and she was, you know, she had waited and got married, and it was a bad marriage. And now she's, you know, wrestling with telling her daughter why she should wait, because she had waited and it didn't work for her. And I was like, you know, I feel like God was probably telling you not to marry the guy if it was that bad. Like, and maybe you just were ignoring his voice or the red flags. There is also a possibility that God leads you into a situation to teach you a lesson too, which, you know, maybe some people would argue with that. I know in my life, there's been times where I know he didn't expect me to succeed. Like, I failed miserably at something, but it taught me a really valuable lesson. And so is that possible in a marriage? I don't know. People could push back on that because, you know, but God's really against divorce. I won't, you know, go there, I guess. But at the end of the day, what I told her was like, look, you were obedient, you know, you waited and you were obedient to God, even if the marriage didn't work out, which there's no guarantees it's gonna. The odds are heavily stacked in your favor that it will if you wait. But at the end of the day, you were obedient, and that counts for something, you know, at least in God's view.
I think that's important that you shared that. You know, we talked about how to know the person for you, and you did hit that a lot. And I think where you're going is a really good spot for the next question. But before that, I think it's important to realize that certain experiences come with life. Unfortunately, some people find themselves in an unfortunate situation. You know, you can't really fight that, but we take lessons out of it. I think in the case of that lady, it's important to realize that it's more than just the waiting. I think maybe the most painful thing for that person is the fact that I waited and I was hoping that this would be the most valuable thing in my marriage, or make that person cherish me more, or make me feel like, you know, I did everything right on my part. Why did this still happen? I've seen stuff like that too.
Yeah.
People feel like they've checked all their boxes, they prayed, they did everything they needed to do, and it still didn't turn out right. And it's very easy to fight God for that. I feel like, what's the point of holding on to values that God desires? What's the point of serving God? What's the point of being faithful to God? What's the point of just not giving it up? If a prostitute can keep doing that and they still get married and have, you know, good relationship, and I did all of that, I think it could be a devil's tactic for you to curse God, just like Job, right? So you can feel like, well, I've been faithful to God. Why did he allow me to go through so many breakups? You know, why did he allow me to go through this? I would tell you, before I met my husband, I went through breakups, but I would say that my valuable lessons and the times that God had taken, the lessons God had given me here in those years, they were painful, but paying it forward is important. Realizing the purpose in your pain, the purpose of your pain, the purpose of your experience. It would all turn out for good. It doesn't matter what it's been. It would all turn out for good. So don't beat yourself up for too long. Yes, it didn't work out, but it would all end up in a good story that you would look back and be like, wow, I know what's going here. I know this is where it was going. But I want to point that out there.
Yeah.
We talk about discernment. Sorry, go ahead.
I just love to add on, and I do think that, again, going back to like, I don't think you need to wait a long time to get married. I think if you met somebody and after 6 months you were feeling real good and peace about it, I would say you could get married that quickly. But I do think that gives time. There needs to be some period of time where you're giving God enough time to speak to you, because like you said in the beginning, you can really be attracted to someone physically, especially. Everybody's been in this position where you see somebody and at first you're like, wow, they're hot, they're cute, and then after maybe a couple weeks go by, you kind of start looking at them a little bit differently, because you kind of break through. Now you see the person that lives on the inside of that tent, and now you're like, yeah, they're pretty, but not for me. I think we have to go through that point where we're like seeing the real person, who lives inside that tent. How are they treating people? How are they responding to different situations? Is God saying anything to me? You're praying. And then, if you're still feeling good with it, of course. But I think that keeping the sex out of it is so important, because at that point, you're not hearing, again, in women, it's something called the amygdala, which is your warning system, shuts down when a woman falls in love. And that's tied to orgasm a lot for the biology. So now, after the amygdala shuts down, you're not seeing red flags like you used to.
My.
Yeah, so literally you could, you're finding like clue. You're maybe seeing things that are telling you that would normally tell you to get the hell out of there, but you're not seeing them anymore because your amygdala is shut down. So
that's why they say love is blind, huh?
Yeah, right.
Literally.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Somebody said my parents met and married in 6 weeks. That's awesome. I would love.
And they've been married how long now, Leah? Yeah. I think that the old-fashioned love, like the way our parents did it, they didn't marry. Some of them didn't date for too long, or grandparents. Some are grandparents, and they're married 54 years, 45 years. But we're having people in 10-year relationships here can't commit, or 10-year relationships and you date for 2 years and you're divorced. You married for 2 years and you're divorced. Thank you, Leah. 40 years. And that's what we're talking about, how challenging the dating scene is. Everybody's here for different things. Nobody wants to commit. Nobody wants to get married. Nobody wants to be faithful. Nobody wants to wait. Everybody's just over here hurting everybody in the streets. Broken people looking for love, but maybe actually sex in the mix. And then we're killing ourselves with this whole mess. Like it's messy, honestly, and it's breaking people up. It's messing people up. And then when you're broken and you're going to a marriage with that, it makes it easy to break the marriage, and cycle continues and continues and continues. How do we, save this thing? How do we save the day? Yeah. I want to talk about red flag. You talk about that, and I see you want to say something here.
Yeah, can I add something real quick? I want to just for the women out there, because I think the number one thing that the enemy tries to stop us from doing this with is fear. Fear is always his number one tool. He tries to get you to believe, hey, if you wait, you're never going to find anybody. No one's going to wait. Nobody waits anymore. You're going to be single forever. And he'll tell you this, and it sounds like it could be true. It sounds reasonable. But no man is going to leave you. No man that loves you or is in love with you is going to leave you because you won't have sex with him. He won't. What he will do is he'll be motivated to marry you. Okay, so when you talk about these 10-year relationships where the people can't, they're in a relationship with somebody that's dragging their feet, that's because the person was never all in. He was always 1 foot in and 1 foot out. The sex got you the relationship, but sex isn't going to make somebody fall in love with you. Sex might extend the time that you're together, but it's not going to make somebody fall in love. It might even get you a marriage, but that person will still be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So I always tell women, if you would have asked the old me, if you met the old me and a woman would have said, hey, I'm waiting, I would have been like this, peace, I'm out. I wouldn't have waited. I would have left. And that would have been very good for her, because she would have avoided me because I was a player. Now, if a woman tells me that she's waiting, I'm like, really? I'm more interested. I want to get to know her because there's not a lot of women that are waiting. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm looking for. So but if a woman tells me she's not waiting, I'm like, I'm out. All right. Because I don't want to date. I've been working on myself. So waiting is going to help you attract what you want. you know, like the person you're looking for. It's going to go through the jokers, like we mentioned earlier, faster. You might be single longer, but you're going to avoid a lot of bad situations by having a standard, a boundary.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I want us to talk about what you said. You said for women's brain, when they're in love or they find themselves in a relationship, and, you know, after a while, your ability to discern goes away because, especially when you mix it with sex, your ability to discern right, and then you're not seeing the red flags anymore. Unfortunately, a lot of people are stuck in such relationships. Like everything is flashing at you. You just don't see it. All you see is love. Help. What do we do? I mean, people cannot just continue to, wallow in a place that it's like a prison now, right?
Like a what? A
Well,
prison?
it's a prison. So how can someone work on discernment right from the beginning? We talked about working with God, and let God direct you and talk to God. And I think that's part of it too. Understanding how God talks to people. I think it's very, like, it's something that's missing these days. Okay, let me read Sherry Burns' message here. Being widowed is so different than being divorced. Rejection creates a much different reaction than death. I've never imagined being with another man, so I am one of those who is afraid. Oh, bless your heart, sharing. Bless your heart. Thank you for sharing. Um, and Rob, what are your thoughts about that? Talk about, discernment. And let's, also talk about sharing. We talked about being afraid. Her situation is a little bit different, but that's another thing. You want to take a leap. It's hard, you know.
Yeah, for discernment, I would just say, it's for me, it's I spend a daily quiet time with God. If I'm really praying about something, I might fast. I might not eat for a day or cut something off for a couple days. But even like, I feel like I've been following God for 22 years, and there's still times I was thinking about it the other day where like I can't remember the last time I heard from God. I don't remember the last time He told me to do something or where I really knew it was Him. Like, so it's sometimes you pray and it feels like your prayers bounce off the ceiling and come back, right? And it's frustrating. I mean, I'm big on doing the last thing that He told me to do until He tells me to do something different, right? So that's what I've done for the majority of the last 22 years is I know there are times where He told me to move or jump and I did it. And then I just continue to do that thing until he told me to do the next thing. And sometimes there were years where maybe I hear a little whisper about something when I thought it might be God, and I'll take a step to see if it is, and it's not, or sometimes it is. But I don't remember the last time I've definitely heard God tell me to do something. It probably wasn't that long ago. I'm just not remembering. But I do think that over time, it is something that can be developed and tuned in. But a lot of it is just jiggling doorknobs. You know what I mean? Almost like you're trying to see which doors open. So like you meet somebody and you might think, wow, I really like this guy or this girl. I think it might be God. Just, jiggle the doorknob and take a step. If it opens, take a step. Don't go, bust through the door and take a step and see if God meets you again, and then just keep walking it out. That's kind of what I've done, where I'll talk to people and I'll pray and I'm like, God, if this isn't it, shut it down. The main thing I think is having your heart right, where you're like, you just really want what He wants for you and not wanting to take control ourselves. And that can be tempting sometimes, because when it's not playing out the way that you want it, you're like, forget it, I'm going to grab the wheel. Right. But if you're, the whole don't grow weary and well doing, for at the proper time we'll reap a harvest if we don't give up. I hang on to that verse so much, because sometimes I'm so tired and I'm like, if I just don't quit, I will reap a harvest. So it's promised to me. So it's just walking it out, staying faithful. And when we were going back to the suffering thing, when you were talking about, this is what we signed up for. And that's so important. It's like, there's so much, a consistent theme in the Bible about suffering. It says even Jesus was made perfect by what He suffered, and He's the Son of God. So what are we going to have to go through? And it says the fellowship of His suffering and rejoicing as much, as we share in His sufferings, and all the talk about perseverance that we're going to need, and those who are faithful to the end will be saved, and you know, if we endure till the end, we will reign with him. And it's just such a consistent theme, and I think we forget where we're like, when I became a Christian, I was like, man, like almost like God's a genie in a bottle, and I'm gonna be able, you know, he's gonna give me everything I want, and it's, you know, it's like he's more like a personal trainer that you're gonna put you through some really grueling workouts that don't feel good to get you into your best shape. And I think if we just kind of really do our best to embrace it, you know, that it, and not resist it, because when you resist it, it gets harder. I feel like, you know, it's almost like, yeah. So it's like just realize that this is what we signed up for. Get into a community of people that are also doing it with you, because I do think that it gets easier when you're around people that are in the fight. But yeah, I don't know. That's I just the suffering piece, man, because I wrestle with it myself, where I'm like, yeah, I never thought it was going to be this hard, you know? Right. But I also never thought it would be this good. Like when I look at a book, I'm like, I never had a book. Like I would have never believed God was going to have me write a book, like or you know, start City Fam, or all these great things. Right. But so.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I think we're, you know, getting out there. Like it's about time to wrap up. I want to talk about, you know, what you just shared there, the waiting, the pain, that beauty in the pain. We talk about, I think I lost my train of thought here, but it's something good. We want to realize, how God talks to us. I think it's important for our life and livelihood. If you miss the way God talks to you, you're going to miss everything God has in stock for you. And you're going to make decisions and conclude your own will. The most beautiful thing that God gave human being is self-will. Even though he's our God, he's not going to make certain decisions for us, but he, like you said, is our personal trainer, gives you all the tools, position everything. There's nothing more beautiful than the story of Adam and Eve. Like, I just feel like God is like a masterminder, is a stage planner, is a stage setter. Put everything. I described this in my book so beautifully, because that's the image God gave me. It's like creating things. Look at the way he created the world. He built this man. Even he built him. He decided he needed somebody, you know, he needed a companion. He put the man to sleep. So I ask you in your singleness, guys, are you resting and letting God lead you? Like, you need to figure out how God leads. You know, if you're a person that likes to date and you only look for what you want to see, and you don't see beyond just your selfish desires. And I use the word selfish because sometimes we feel like our list are the things that are really limiting God. It's okay, it's good to have lists, but are your lists limiting God from working and limiting you from seeing what God could potentially have for you? There's some of you who are friend zoning your husbands and your wife. I will not stop saying that here. You're looking for all glorified, perfect image of that person, but the person you're looking for is probably not wrapped up in the package you want. I want to say that. So you need to realize what God is telling you about a person before you make any conclusion. Even when you feel really good about it, before you get your right person, you're going to get the wrong person. You might get the wrong person in most cases, because that's the devil's plan, to make sure you miss God's plan for you. They're going to present you with something that's not going to be worthwhile, so you won't get God's best. Jesus went through that when he went out to fast. After he was weak, he had done everything to be consecrated, to be holy, to do whatever he needed to do. And it was time to go fulfill purpose. And the devil came with a big offer. Your biggest offer, if it seems too good to be true, please ask God and get confirmation. We talk about discernment, but we can't talk about everything today. But these are revelations. I tell you, these are revelations that we experience But sometimes life experience helps you to bring it out. And these are things that God helped me to realize. God is talking to us every day, every moment, every step of the way. But we fight it because of our desires, because of our expectation, because of societal expectations. You know, trash everything you've, I don't want to, I scratch that. Not everything you've known, but everything that the society describes to you as the way things has to work. And you say, it has to be this way. If I don't date you after 3 weeks, you know, then we cannot, you know, talk about certain things. Like the rules that box you in and box God's in. You need to break down some walls and let God help you. And just submit to God. That's what I'll say. Okay, I'm sounding preachy here, but let's it's something because you allow God to work through you. We wrap this up, Rob. We talk. I want us to talk to two last things here. I would combine them. Doubt. So we talked about red flags. There are people who are doubting who they're with. They meet a person, they're second guessing and realizing maybe this is not the person for me. Maybe. What are your thoughts about such people? You know, or you're in a relationship with a person, you're starting to feel like this is probably not it. You may have been convinced in the beginning, and you feel like this is not it.
Yeah. Somebody's asking about your book. You might want to answer that after this.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see that.
So, well, first off, if you're married, you're going to have to fight for that relationship, because I do believe that God doesn't want you to divorce. It'd have to be, you know, pretty bad for you to consider that. But I think if you're okay, for me, this is what happened 10 or 11 years ago. I was in a relationship with a girl. We were having sex. We had a good sex life. We had a bad relationship. We had broken up probably 10 or 15 times over the course of like a year and a half. And we would break up, a week or two would go by, we'd get back together. And, you know, I rededicated my life to God, and God started to convict me of the sex. And I had, you know, I had made a lot of sexual mistakes over the past few years. So to me, I was kind of rationalizing like, well, I'm only having sex with her and we are in a committed relationship. So I was trying to ignore God. In all honesty, I was trying to pretend like I wasn't hearing him. And he made it really clear to stop. And of course, I didn't know about the book. I didn't know about City Fam. All I knew is God's telling me to stop having sex with my beautiful girlfriend. And I'm like, damn it, you know, like I wasn't real happy with that. But I did want to be obedient. So I basically was like, all right, listen, God, I'm going to try this again. Because I had already did it for 6 years and I felt I backslid. So I said, I'm going to try this again your way. And it was just a conversation I had with him. I said, and if I'm in love with her, I want you to convince me and we'll get married. But if I'm not in love with her, I want you to help us to break up, because obviously we can't do it ourselves.
Oh.
So I went to my girlfriend and I said, hey, I'm not, basically I said, look, I'm not really sure if we're built to last. I'm like, here's how we're going to find out. We're going to stop having sex. And if we become convinced that we're in love, we can get married. But if we could become convinced that we're not in love, let's stop wasting each other's time. And we cut it off. She wasn't really thrilled about it, to be honest. She didn't necessarily want to stop, but she could tell that I was serious. And after about 3 weeks, it was like the clouds parted and we both had clarity, and we could see that we weren't in love. We weren't going to the same places in life. We didn't even really get along well. And we broke up, and literally she got pregnant about a month later by her neighbor and moved out of state. And it was like God just completely honored my prayer, took her away. So I would say, if you're in a physical relationship and you're not sure if this is the person, the best way to find out if the love is real is to stop having sex. Because you're going to put that relationship under a microscope, because the way our bodies are wired, you want sex, I want sex, everybody wants sex. So it's like saying, okay, are we in love or not? Because I want to have sex again. And you're going to figure it out real quick. It's scary, because it you know, if you're going to find out either one of two things: that this person's a joker and he was wasting your time, or she was wasting your time, or the person's going to man up or woman up and marry you, and you're going to get what, you know, the commitment, which is hopefully what you want, especially if you're getting physical. Either way, you win. You know, if they leave you because you stop having sex, you just got rid of a time waster. Now you can go out and find a real person. So, but if you're saying, if you're having doubt with somebody that you're in a relationship with and you're not getting physical, you know, that I would say continue to walk it out, you know. And I guess some people say if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no, right? Like, I feel like at some point it has to be a hell yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're away with them for a period of time and you can't get to a hell yes, then that's probably an indicator that they're not the person.
Right. And how long would you go with the doubt? How long would you go before you realize and tell you and be honest with yourself? If there's a doubt,
Yeah.
really, don't doubt your doubt.
Right. Right.
Don't doubt your doubts. Your doubts are valid. You need to confirm it. Am I being real? Am I making up stories? If you're not making up stories, please. These are the ways God talks to us. Really, honestly, your instincts, your thoughts. You have internal things to help you know when something is not right. They're called instincts. Don't ignore them. Just listen, and
Your
then
intuition.
yeah. Thank you. Your intuition is there to guide you. So listen and take the right steps and trust that everything will be fine. Don't work with doubt and expect it's gonna just poof away. But we're at the end of this conversation. I wish we could stay. I want to be respectful of your time, Rob. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. This is really good. I'm telling you, when we start this, yes, Leah, thank you. Holy Spirit nudges you. And then when you eventually make decisions and you ignore the voice of God for a while and you do what makes you feel good, you ignore God through that, and then you fall. We fall, let me say that. Then we come back and start crying to God, God, why did you do this to me? And you did that to yourself. God does not do bad things to us. We do it to ourselves, and God is yelling, please don't do that. Don't move in this way. Don't talk to that person. Don't go this far. And we're not listening. It's like your parents. I'm a parent now. And I see a lot of God's quality in being a parent. I have little kids. Don't touch that, because I know it's going to hurt that child. I'm telling them, don't touch that, or don't go there. And they hit their leg on something and they start crying, Mommy, I hurt myself. Well, I told you not to do that. So we need to learn to listen to our Heavenly Father. I wish we could spend longer, but we've come to the end of this. Rob, thank you so much for your time. I want you to tell us about your book, Why Waiting Works, and the community you've built. Tell us about that, and also how people can benefit from it.
Thank you. Why Waiting Works is the book. Whywaitingworks.com. You can get a free copy just by paying shipping and handling. And I got a study guide that goes with it, and some other bonuses. But I really feel like it breaks it down, the practicality, better than maybe any other book of why you would want to do this. And I think once you know your why, you're able. It's hard to do something when you don't understand why, right? Like a lot of times the church just tells us not to do things, but when you understand the why behind it, it definitely puts more fuel in your tank. And I believe that it's going to lead. Ultimately, it's going to lead everyone to get past the loneliness that comes with all these wishy-washy relationships. Like I think that's like there's a loneliness epidemic around the world. A lot of people are lonely and depressed, and a lot of that I believe is because of there's not depth to their relationships, whether it's romantic or even their friendships. So the book is going to give you a path to get past that, because I believe it's very closely tied to waiting. When I started waiting, I had a lot of friends before when I was in the scene, when I was partying, but there was no depth. And I remember sometimes being in a crowded nightclub, everybody knew my name, and I felt so lonely because we weren't sharing anything of value with each other. So when I started to go down this path of waiting, I had to cultivate friendships with people that really there was depth to. I adding value to their life. They were adding value to my life. We were out volunteering together, and it wasn't like we were just using each other for partying and just good time Charlies. And that for me, you know, really, it just gave me a lot of personal fulfillment, I guess. So the book again, whywaitingworks.com is the website. It kind of lands on City Fam, the book does, because I'm like, look, this is the right way. Here's why it's right. If you're going to do this, you need to find some people to do it with, because it can be very lonely if you don't have community. There's this thing called City Fam. You know, you could join us, and we can connect you with some like-minded people. So really, it's just City Fam is just people that are. It's not the abstinent group, because there are people in there that aren't waiting, but it is the group of people that want to be the best version of themselves. And we go out, and we do things together to you know, have fun without regret, we call it. So like last night we were all out doing karaoke, and then next weekend we'll be volunteering somewhere. And other times we go to church with each other, and it's just again, it's community. So if anybody wants to connect with the best two places to go would be, if you have Facebook, go to the Waiting Works community. That's a Facebook group of about 4,000 people. And there's people even in Nigeria that are in there, I'm sure. And we may be able to connect you with other people in your area, but then there's also a community called City Fam on Facebook. But both of those URLs, just to give them quickly, the first one is reallovewaits.com. It'll take you directly to the Facebook group. And then the second URL is friendswithbetterbenefits.com. So everybody's heard of Friends with Benefits. This is friendswithbetterbenefits.com. It'll take you to the City Fam group. And we may be able to connect you with people that live close to you. And we have a whole process, like step-by-step system, to help you get something started in your area. That's what we're kind of really passionate about.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rob. We appreciate you. We want to appreciate everyone that's joined us today. This is Dating and Relationship Conversations with Funke Oladele. I started this in September. This is in preparation towards my book launch. You know, God's just placed in my heart to, you know, put out this book, you know, to be able to support singles in this time. And I see that God has also given Rob a vision for community building support, where people can feel like themselves and be the best version of themselves and get the best that God has in store for them. I just want to let you know today, if you're single, God has a plan for you, and He has the best for you. Just trust and wait on Him. And He would make a masterpiece out of your life, I tell you. You know, I think Leah mentioned earlier, her parents got married within 6 weeks. I'm telling you, I got married within less than a year, actually. You know, God did it. And prior to that, I found myself in relationships that would not, you know, be less than, you know, 2.5 to 3 years, not even less than 3 years. But God made a masterpiece, and God worked out His purpose. So I believe God has the best for you. My book's coming out in November. If you're going to be interested, you can DM me, and then we'll make sure we have that available to you. But Rob, thank you so much. God bless you for all you do, and we pray that you get God's best for yourself, and for everybody that's joined us. Thank you so much. If you need a community, need support, you know, feel free to join his group. If you have questions for me, DM me, and let's win together towards God's best. Thank you. Thank you.
See you, everybody. Thank you.
Good day.